Snipers, you have to see what's happening to the Bitcoin price this Friday as we're heading into the weekend where the markets are the most manipulated, and we are currently inside of the range of our previous all-time high from April 14th at 64,855 as a major resistance and a major support at 61,844. We are just $1,000 shy of testing this extremely important support level with today's daily candle low reaching 62,275. This is an extremely critical video to talk about the scenarios we could expect during the weekend, as we know the markets are the most manipulated, and we're going to discuss the outside environment and talk about how that's going to affect Bitcoin. But right now, we can start going into the 6-hour time frame, and I talked about the institutional volume that we saw at this candle high here, where we saw the $69,000 level, and then we proceeded to break down below 64,855 with the most amount of volume that we've seen since the start of this consolidation when Bitcoin initially reached the $67,000 level. That was a very big puzzle piece yesterday, and I talked about this also affecting today's price action to potentially see further downside. That's exactly what we're seeing. We are seeing a continuation down. But right now, we can actually go into the 1-hour time frame and start looking at more of the micro movements here, because at this point, we do have a weekly open that we could consider as a very important level here, and that's at 63,300. You can see Bitcoin right now is fighting to get back above 63,300. If we are able to get some hourly and 4-hour candles above 63,300, the assumption would be that we are going to come up and retest 64,855. And at that point, we have to monitor the volume and see if we can get back above this level. Because remember, as I said yesterday, 64,855 is where the bulls need to get above in order to regain control to continue price discovery for Bitcoin. Now, this is all happening after the inflation numbers came out and the DXY formed new yearly highs over the last 2 days. And now that we're ending the week and we know 63,300 right now is the first level that the bulls need to conquer, but more importantly, 64,855, I also want to talk about what would happen if we were to come down and test 61,844 during the weekend, because in the Discord group, you can see we're having a ton of conversations about Bitcoin potentially being in an ABC correction, like Topansy says here. And then someone also said here, according to my expert calculations, if 62,000 doesn't hold, 60,000 will come on the table. And if 60,000 doesn't hold, we are in for the bone zone. And so we have the #1 cryptocurrency Discord group in the world. I love reading your guys' conversations. And so knowing the fact that 61,844 right now is a potential level on the table, we have to realize why this is so important. We have the monthly open sitting just below at 61,300. We could really assume that inside of 61,844 and 61,300 is where we're going to see a decision for Bitcoin. And so if we come down at this point to test 61,844 and we do not see volume come in on the micro time frames, knowing the fact that on the 6-hour time frame at the $69,000 level, we saw a lot of sell pressure, the likelihood that we come down and test 58,353 comes on the table. Now, we do have an area of support here before this level, and that's a market structural support level just around that $60,000 big even level. But understand that if we come down to this area and we break 61,844, the concern that I have is if we go into this 4-hour chart, 58,353 is a very big floor for Bitcoin at this point, because if this level breaks, there's a 15% gap to the next level of support, which is at 50,000 US dollars. And so this is going to be a very critical range for Bitcoin right now. And if we were to just kind of assume a more macro range or a medium-term range, we could say that Bitcoin right now is in the range of 58,353 as a major support and the $64,855 level. I think these are the two biggest levels of support and resistance right now for Bitcoin to get a confirmation of the next move. And of course, I discussed some of the more micro time frame levels that are important, like 63,300 right now, that the bulls are trying to get back above so that we can get towards 64,855. But this is a very critical time for Bitcoin. Now, understand this as well. So far, we have a rejection of this market structural resistance that dates back to the all-time high from April 14th, and then we formed the higher high, and then now we have a rejection of this resistance level. And we also, at this point, have come down and tested this bullish symmetrical triangles support twice already. The more you knock on the door, the more likely it is to break. So these are just puzzle pieces I want to throw out on the table. And realize this, when we look at what's happening to the environment outside of Bitcoin, I do want to look at the total market cap first and foremost. We are back below the weekly open, which is showing some weakness in the overall market. There is a level of support here at 2.62 trillion, where we have the monthly open that we could potentially find some support for the total market cap. But we look at the Ethereum and the Bitcoin chart, which is going to really give us an idea of how altcoins are going to react to the next move for Bitcoin. You can see we're still showing weakness on the chart. And I say that because we're below the weekly open at 72,900 Satoshis, really that 73,000 Satoshi level. And if the Ethereum and the Bitcoin chart continues to show weakness, but more importantly, if we break below the monthly open right around that 70,000 Satoshi level, that would be a confirmation that the altcoins could potentially bleed against Bitcoin in the next move. And so if we want to assume strength for altcoins, the Ethereum to Bitcoin chart needs to get above the weekly open at that 73,000 Satoshi level, and that could change the storyline for the overall altcoin market. And you can see this reflecting on this chart that factors in the altcoins outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, also below the weekly open, the 50-day and 100-day moving average, but it's in a very tight area between the 200-day and this extremely important resistance right around that 35% level. And so this is going to be a chart to monitor over the next few days into the weekend, especially if Bitcoin starts to move further. But interestingly enough, you can see Bitcoin dominance isn't necessarily showing the greatest amount of strength, but we are above the weekly open. And so when it comes to the weekly, obviously altcoins and the total market cap are below the weekly open, but the Bitcoin dominance chart is above the weekly open. So that can give us a little bit of a hint as to the direction this chart wants to go. It seems like Bitcoin dominance is showing more strength this week. And this is all happening after the revolving parts like the DXY started to move up and form new yearly highs after those inflation numbers came out. And that's how we were able to predict that there was going to be a potential push down for Bitcoin. And I do want to quickly graze over Ethereum here. Notice here Ethereum also coming down below this major structural support level. And that's all because of Bitcoin not being able to get back above 64,855. If Bitcoin does start to cross below 61,844, I think the likelihood that Ethereum comes down to test 4290, where we have the monthly open, is extremely high. And the Ethereum to US dollar price, of course, is going to be affected by the Bitcoin to US dollar price, but the Ethereum to Bitcoin chart is what really matters more to determine where there's strength. And so the DXY today not really moving up, and so that's a good thing coming into the weekend. The S&P 500 showing some relief back to test the weekly open, but because we are below the weekly open and we're about to close the week here below the weekly open potentially, that is a puzzle piece that we have to address. But we're not seeing any violent reactions right now with the outside environment. So we could assume that we're starting to calm down. This could be the worst of the downside, but this all has to do with whether or not Bitcoin can conquer 63,300 first and foremost, but more importantly, get above 64,855. And then lastly, I do want to address ending the week. A lot of times what you'll see is on Friday, institutions will make their final bets on commodities like gold. You can see we're showing strength here, which means that there's still some uncertainty in the traditional markets where capital is hedging into gold. And if we look at the gold to Bitcoin chart, notice how right now, because we did not break the lows from October 20th that we've been monitoring, we're seeing a push up above the weekly and monthly open, which is a very big puzzle piece. If this chart starts to move up even further towards the 50-day moving average, that's going to be something that we really are going to have to keep in mind, because that is going to give us a determination of how much fuel is left for Bitcoin. Moving above this 50-day moving average wouldn't be the best thing for Bitcoin, but breaking these lows and continuing further down would show that there's a lot more gas in the tank. So this is going to be a very important weekend, that's for sure. Bitcoin right now is testing some extremely important levels, but we are still moving sideways. And just remember, the path of least resistance when there's low volume is always going to be sideways to a little bit higher. And so even if we come down towards 58,353, we are still moving sideways. And so there's nothing to worry about just yet. I think that it would be very worrisome if we get below 61,844, because then we only have 58,353 left as a major support. But right now, it's garden variety market behavior, sideways price action, and it doesn't look like altcoins are ready to necessarily move just yet. But if we do see some more sideways price action, some green candles for Bitcoin, then we really want to start watching the Ethereum to Bitcoin chart because that could assume that altcoins still have some room to move to the upside within this consolidation period. So a lot happening, of course. We're seeing a lot of conversation in the Discord. I just wanted to throw this quick update out to you guys now that we've confirmed this potential rejection here at 64,855 for the short term. And it's going to be a very interesting time here. I think that it's quite a funny thing that Bitcoin at this point has an all-time high of $69,000 on the dot. I don't personally think that's where Bitcoin will top out, but in the short term, it could potentially be a level that we see some sort of a slowdown because of the fact that we saw so much institutional sell pressure there. And that is a very big puzzle piece with this rising sell pressure coming in to the weekend. We have to be careful. Remember, the weekends are the most manipulated in the market. We stopped taking altcoin trades around 3 a.m. today after hitting all targets with our last two trades with Hashgraph and Decentraland because of what we were seeing with the markets. But we will continue to take altcoin trades if we start to see more green candles come. And so remember, we also have the #1 cryptocurrency signals in the world and the #1 community in the world. And with that being said, thank you all for tuning in to the Snipers channel this Friday. I cannot wait to see what happens this weekend. And until next time, Snipers out.